This exam covers the following major work activities: common occupational skills, rigging, hoisting and crane operations, fabricating and installing reinforcement, pre-stressing and post-tensioning, erection, assembly and installation, and one more areas. Question 1. At what height above a lower level must an ironworker use fall protection on a Canadian construction site? A. 3 meters, as required by most provincial occupational health and safety regulations. B. 6 meters, which applies to general construction at height. C. 1.5 meters, as required under Workplace Health and Safety Acts. D. 4.5 meters, which is the federal minimum for structural steel. The correct answer is A. 3 meters, as required by most provincial occupational health and safety regulations. Fall protection is required at 3 meters, 10 feet, above a lower level on Canadian construction sites under most provincial occupational health and safety regulations. This height threshold applies to all construction workers, including ironworkers. Some tasks may require fall protection at lower heights if the risk of injury is increased, but 3 meters is the standard trigger height across most jurisdictions. Question 2. Which type of hard hat is required for ironworkers working near electrical hazards on a construction site? A. Type 1, Class G, General, rated for low-voltage electrical protection. B. Type 1, Class E, Electrical, rated for high-voltage electrical protection. C. Type 2, Class C, Conductive, designed for non-electrical environments. D. Type 2, Class G, General, rated for moderate impact protection only. The correct answer is B. Type 1, Class E, Electrical, rated for high-voltage electrical protection. Type 1, Class E, Electrical, hard hats are rated for protection against high-voltage electrical hazards up to 20,000 volts. Hard hats are classified by type, impact protection, and class, electrical protection. Class E provides the highest level of electrical protection, which is essential for iron workers who may work near energized electrical lines or equipment on construction sites. Question 3. What color-coded power level of powder-actuated tool cartridge indicates the highest charge strength? A. Green cartridges, which are designed for heavy structural anchoring. B. Yellow cartridges, which are rated for maximum penetration in steel. C. Blue cartridges, which are standard for medium-duty steel fastening. D. Purple cartridges, which are designated as the strongest charge level. The correct answer is D. Purple cartridges, which are designated as the strongest charge level. Purple cartridges indicate the highest charge strength, level 6, in the standardized color coding system for powder-actuated tool loads. The system ranges from gray, level 1, weakest, through brown, green, yellow, and red to purple, level 6, strongest. Ironworkers must select the correct load level based on the material type and thickness to ensure proper fastener penetration without overdriving. Question 4. What is the primary purpose of a spud wrench in structural ironwork? A. To align bolt holes in steel connections and tighten structural bolts. B. To bend reinforcing steel bars to specified angles during placement. C. To torque high-strength bolts to their specified pretension values. D. To remove damaged bolts from structural steel flange connections. The correct answer is A. To align bolt holes in steel connections and tighten structural bolts. A spud wrench is a specialized ironworker tool used to align bolt holes in structural steel connections and tighten bolts. It features a tapered handle end, the spud, that is inserted into misaligned bolt holes to bring them into alignment, and a wrench end for turning nuts and bolts. It is one of the most essential and frequently used hand tools in structural ironwork. Question 5. What is the standard minimum bend diameter for grade 400R reinforcing steel bar sizes 10mm through 20mm? A. 4 times the bar diameter, as specified by the Canadian Rebar Standard. B. 8 times the bar diameter, for all standard reinforcing steel grades. C. 6 times the bar diameter, which is the standard for these bar sizes. D. 3 times the bar diameter, which applies to mild steel bars only. The correct answer is C, 6 times the bar diameter, which is the standard for these bar sizes. The standard minimum bend diameter for grade 400R reinforcing steel bars in sizes 10mm through 20mm is 6 times the bar diameter, 6 dB, as required for standard reinforcing bar bending. Using a smaller bend radius risks cracking the bar and reducing its tensile strength. Larger bars, 30mm and above, require an 8 dB minimum bend diameter to maintain structural integrity after bending. Question 6. On a structural drawing, what does an arrow side fillet weld symbol indicate for the ironworker? A. The weld is to be placed on the same side as the arrow points to. B. The weld is to be placed on the opposite side from the arrow line. C. The weld must be performed as a full penetration groove weld type. D. The weld is required on both sides of the joint at the same time. The correct answer is A. The weld is to be placed on the same side as the arrow points to. An arrow side fillet weld symbol indicates that the weld is to be placed on the same side as the arrow points to. In the AWS welding symbol system used in Canadian structural drawings, a weld symbol placed below the reference line indicates an arrow side weld, while a symbol above the line indicates an other side weld. Understanding weld symbol placement is essential for ironworkers performing field welding. Question 7. When performing layout for structural steel anchor bolt placement, which tool provides the most accurate level reference? A. A plumb bob suspended from the nearest structural member overhead. B. An optical or laser transit level set up over a known benchmark point. C. A carpenter's spirit level placed directly on the foundation surface. D. A tape measure reference from the nearest existing building column. The correct answer is B. An optical or laser transit level set up over a known benchmark point. An optical or laser transit level set up over a known benchmark point provides the most accurate level reference for anchor bolt layout. Transit levels project precise horizontal and vertical reference lines over long distances, essential for ensuring anchor bolts are placed at the correct elevation and position. This accuracy is critical because anchor bolt placement errors are extremely costly to correct after concrete is poured. Question 8. Which SMAW electrode classification is most commonly used for structural steel field welding by ironworkers? A. E6010 electrodes, which are designed for deep penetration root passes. B. E7024 electrodes, which are limited to flat and horizontal positions. C. E7018 electrodes, which are low hydrogen and suitable for all positions. D. E6013 electrodes, which produce shallow penetration in mild steel. The correct answer is C. E7018 electrodes, which are low hydrogen and suitable for all positions. E7018 electrodes are the most commonly used for structural steel field welding by ironworkers. They are low hydrogen electrodes suitable for all welding positions, providing high-quality welds with excellent mechanical properties. The low hydrogen designation is critical for structural applications because hydrogen can cause cracking in weld metal and heat-affected zones. CWB standards frequently specify E7018 for structural connections. Question 9. What is the correct order for opening valves when lighting an oxyfuel cutting torch for structural steel work? A. Open the oxygen valve first, then open the fuel gas valve and ignite. B. Open both the oxygen and fuel gas valves simultaneously then ignite. C. Open the fuel gas valve halfway, ignite, then slowly add the oxygen. D. Open the fuel gas valve slightly, ignite the gas, then slowly add oxygen. The correct answer is D. Open the fuel gas valve slightly, ignite the gas, then slowly add oxygen. The correct lighting sequence is to open the fuel gas valve slightly, ignite the gas with a striker, then slowly open the oxygen valve to achieve a neutral or slightly oxidizing cutting flame. Opening oxygen first or simultaneously can cause a dangerous flashback or unstable ignition. This sequence is the industry standard safe practice for oxyfuel equipment and is taught in all ironworker apprenticeship programs. Question 10. An ironworker discovers that a coworker's full body harness has a frayed webbing strap. What is the most appropriate first action? A. Remove the harness from service immediately and tag it as defective. B. Repair the frayed strap using approved webbing and industrial thread. C. Report the defect to the supervisor at the end of the current shift. D. Allow continued use if the fraying affects less than 10%. The correct answer is A. Remove the harness from service immediately and tag it as defective. The most appropriate first action is to remove the harness from service immediately and tag it as defective. Fall protection equipment with any visible damage, including frayed webbing, must be taken out of service right away to prevent a potential catastrophic fall. Fall protection standards require that damaged fall arrest equipment be removed from use, inspected by a competent person, and either repaired by the manufacturer or destroyed. Question 11. When planning a task that requires a critical lift of heavy structural steel, what document must be prepared first? A. A material takeoff list showing all steel members and their weights. B. A detailed lift plan reviewed and signed by a professional engineer. C. A toolbox talk agenda covering general construction site hazards. D. A daily work schedule showing crew assignments and break periods. The correct answer is B. A detailed lift plan reviewed and signed by a professional engineer. For a critical lift, a detailed lift plan reviewed and signed by a professional engineer must be prepared first. Critical lifts, including those exceeding a certain percentage of the crane's rated capacity, lifts over occupied areas, or lifts of unusual configurations, require engineered lift plans under most provincial occupational health and safety regulations. The plan specifies load weight, rigging configuration, crane capacity at working radius, and safety procedures. Question 12. Under Canadian workplace legislation, what is an employer's primary obligation regarding psychological health on site? A. Providing monthly counseling sessions for all construction workers. B. Conducting annual employee satisfaction surveys on job site morale. C. Posting workplace conduct policies on the Site Safety Bulletin Board. D. Implementing measures to prevent harassment and workplace violence. The correct answer is D. Implementing measures to prevent harassment and workplace violence. Under Canadian workplace legislation, employers have a primary obligation to implement measures to prevent harassment and workplace violence. Provincial occupational health and safety acts require employers to develop and enforce policies and programs that address workplace harassment and violence, including training, reporting mechanisms, and investigation procedures. This obligation is part of maintaining a healthy and respectful work environment for all construction workers. Question 13. What method should an ironworker use to communicate with a crane operator who has no direct line of sight to the load? A. Designate a qualified signal person who maintains visual contact. B. Use two-way radios without a designated signal person on the ground. C. Rely on the crane operator's experience to maneuver loads safely. D. Have multiple workers give signals simultaneously from different spots. The correct answer is A. Designate a qualified signal person who maintains visual contact. When a crane operator has no direct line of sight to the load, a designated qualified signal person must maintain visual contact with both the load and the operator to relay signals. This is required by crane safety regulations and provincial occupational health and safety regulations. Two-way radios may supplement but cannot replace the signal person. Only one designated signal person should direct each lift to avoid conflicting instructions. Question 14. What is the primary reason ironworkers must stay current with changes to Canadian Welding Bureau, CWB, standards? A. To qualify for higher wage rates under the provincial labor codes. B. To ensure field welds comply with the latest structural safety codes. C. To maintain their personal welding certification without retesting. D. To meet the continuing education hours required for trade licensing. The correct answer is B. To ensure field welds comply with the latest structural safety codes. Ironworkers must stay current with CWB standards to ensure field welds comply with the latest structural safety codes. CWB welding standards are updated periodically to reflect new materials, techniques, and safety requirements. Non-compliant welds can compromise structural integrity and may be rejected during inspection, requiring costly rework and project delays. Question 19. What information on a crane load chart changes when the boom length is increased on a telescopic boom crane? A. The maximum counterweight value shown on the load chart decreases. B. The minimum operating radius listed on the load chart decreases. C. The rated lifting capacity at each operating radius decreases. D. The maximum allowable wind speed for crane operation decreases. The correct answer is C. The rated lifting capacity at each operating radius decreases. When boom length increases on a telescopic boom crane, the rated lifting capacity at each operating radius decreases. A longer boom creates a greater moment arm, which increases the tipping moment relative to the crane's counterweight. Crane load charts show separate capacity tables for each boom length, with lower capacities as boom length increases. Reading the correct chart section for the actual boom length is critical for safe lifting. Question 23. What condition in a chain sling requires immediate removal from service during an ironworker's pre-lift inspection? A. Stretched or elongated links exceeding 5% of original size. B. Surface rust that is visible on more than half of the chain links. C. Faded or worn identification tags that are difficult to read clearly. Question 32. After a steel beam is bolted into position and the rigging can be removed, what should the ironworker do with the slings? A. Leave the slings draped over the beam for reuse on the next member. B. Drop the slings to the ground level for the crew to collect below. C. Secure the slings to the crane hook and signal the operator to hoist. D. Coil the slings and store them in the nearest tool crib on the level. The correct answer is C. Secure the slings to the crane hook and signal the operator to hoist. After removing slings from a secured member, the ironworker should secure the slings to the crane hook and signal the operator to hoist them clear. Leaving slings draped on steel creates a tripping or falling object hazard, and dropping slings from height is extremely dangerous to workers below. Slings are returned to the crane hook so they can be lowered safely to the rigging area for the next lift or inspection. Question 33. What should the ironworker inspect on the rigging equipment immediately after completing a heavy structural lift? A. The crane's engine oil level and hydraulic fluid temperature gauge. B. The condition of the landing zone surface beneath the placed member. C. The outrigger pad condition and soil compression around the crane. D. The slings, shackles, and hooks for signs of damage or deformation. The correct answer is D. The slings, shackles, and hooks for signs of damage or deformation. Immediately after completing a heavy lift, the ironworker should inspect slings, shackles, and hooks for signs of damage or deformation. Post-lift inspection identifies equipment that may have been overstressed, nicked by sharp edges, or kinked during the lift. Any damaged rigging must be removed from service before the next lift. This inspection is a required step in the post-lift procedure under rigging safety standards. A. Hang them on a rack or hook in a dry area away from corrosive agents. B. Lay them flat on the ground and cover with a plastic tarp for drying. C. Stack them in a pile near the crane for immediate access during lifts. D. Wrap them tightly in a coil and secure with wire to prevent tangling. The correct answer is A. Hang them on a rack or hook in a dry area away from corrosive agents. Wire rope slings should be hung on a rack or hook in a dry area away from corrosive agents when not in use. Proper storage prevents kinking, crushing, and corrosion that can weaken the rope. Laying slings on the ground exposes them to moisture, chemicals, and vehicle traffic damage. Hanging allows air circulation and makes it easy to inspect slings before the next use. Question 62. What is the maximum allowable spacing for stirrups in a concrete beam where shear reinforcement is required? A. The spacing equals the full effective depth of the beam at all points. B. Half the effective depth of the beam, or 600 mm maximum. C. 1/4 of the effective depth for all standard beam applications. D. 300 mm regardless of beam size, depth, or loading condition. The correct answer is B. Half the effective depth of the beam, or 600 mm maximum. The maximum allowable spacing for stirrups in a concrete beam requiring shear reinforcement is half the effective depth, d/2, of the beam or 600 mm, whichever is less. The concrete design standard sets this limit to ensure that any potential diagonal shear crack crosses at least one stirrup. In regions of high shear, the spacing may be further reduced to d/4 to provide additional shear resistance. Question 63. An inspector finds that bottom reinforcing steel in a footing is resting on the subgrade with no bar supports. What is the consequence? A. The concrete pore volume will increase due to the lower bar position. B. The footing will have greater punching shear capacity than designed. C. The footing's flexural capacity is reduced due to insufficient cover. D. The concrete will cure faster because of direct contact with the soil. The correct answer is C. The footing's flexural capacity is reduced due to insufficient cover. When bottom reinforcing steel rests directly on the subgrade without bar supports, the effective depth of the reinforcement is reduced and concrete cover may be inadequate. This results in the footing's flexural capacity being reduced below the design value because the lever arm between the compression zone and the tension steel is shorter than intended. The steel is also vulnerable to corrosion from direct soil contact. Question 64. What type of mechanical splice is used to join reinforcing bars end-to-end without increasing the overall bar diameter? A. A threaded coupler that screws onto pre-threaded rebar ends directly. B. A welded but splice using full penetration groove weld on bar ends. C. A swaged sleeve coupler that is hydraulically compressed around bars. D. A lap splice with tie wire wrapped around the overlapping bar section. The correct answer is A. A threaded coupler that screws onto pre-threaded rebar ends directly. A threaded coupler, mechanical threaded splice, joins reinforcing bars end-to-end by screwing onto pre-threaded bar ends. This type of splice does not significantly increase the overall bar diameter at the connection, making it ideal for congested reinforcement areas. Threaded couplers must meet or exceed the tensile strength of the bars being connected as required by the concrete design standard for Type 1 or Type 2 mechanical connections. Question 78. What is the primary purpose of false work during structural steel erection on a construction project? A. To provide temporary support until permanent connections are complete. B. To serve as the permanent foundation for the structural steel frame. Question 80. When installing high-strength structural bolts using the turn-of-nut method, what is the first step in the procedure? Question 83. What is the minimum number of bolts that must be installed in a connection before the crane can release a steel member? A. 1 bolt per connection is sufficient to release the crane hook load. B. All bolts shown on the drawing must be installed before crane release. C. At least 2 bolts per connection in the same joint to prevent rotation. D. The number depends on the connection design but never fewer than 2. The correct answer is C. At least 2 bolts per connection in the same joint to prevent rotation. At least 2 bolts per connection must be installed before the crane can release a structural steel member. 2 bolts prevent rotation of the member about a single bolt axis, providing stability against gravity loads and wind. Structural steel erection standards and industry practice require a minimum of 2 bolts in each connection to ensure the member is safely supported before the crane moves to the next pick. Question 84. What type of temporary bracing is typically used to stabilize a steel frame during erection before permanent bracing is installed? A. Wire rope guy cables tensioned with turnbuckles to anchor points. B. Concrete masonry shear walls cast before the steel frame is erected. C. Permanent cross bracing installed ahead of the erection schedule. D. Timber cribbing stacked beneath each column base plate for support. The correct answer is A. Wire rope guy cables tensioned with turnbuckles to anchor points. Wire rope guy cables tensioned with turnbuckles anchored to concrete deadmen or other fixed points are the most common temporary bracing used to stabilize steel frames during erection. Guy cables resist lateral forces from wind and construction loads until permanent bracing, cross bracing, moment connections, or shear walls, is installed and connected. The temporary bracing plan is part of the erection procedure. Question 85. How does an ironworker adjust the elevation of a steel beam that is sitting slightly high on its column support? A. Grind down the top of the column to lower the beam to correct level. B. Report the deviation to the engineer for evaluation before adjusting. C. Cut a section from the column web to allow the beam to settle lower. D. Use shim plates under the beam bearing to raise the column to match. The correct answer is B. Report the deviation to the engineer for evaluation before adjusting. When a steel beam sits higher than the design elevation on its column support, the ironworker must report the deviation to the engineer for evaluation before making adjustments. Unauthorized grinding or cutting of structural members can compromise the member's capacity. The engineer will determine whether shimming, remachining, or accepting the deviation within tolerance is the appropriate corrective action. Question 102. What type of material handling system do ironworkers commonly install in mining and aggregate processing facilities? A. Pneumatic tube systems that transport documents between buildings. B. Robotic arm assemblies used in automotive manufacturing plants only. C. Gravity-fed chute systems designed for office mail sorting purposes. D. Belt conveyor systems that transport bulk materials between locations. The correct answer is D. Belt conveyor systems that transport bulk materials between locations. Belt conveyor systems are the most common material handling systems that ironworkers install in mining and aggregate processing facilities. These systems consist of steel frame sections, idler rollers, drive units, and belt assemblies that transport bulk materials such as ore, aggregate, and coal over long distances. Ironworkers assemble the structural steel frame and install the mechanical components. Question 103. When installing conveyor support structures, what must the ironworker establish before setting the first frame section? A. Precise baseline elevations and alignment references for the full run. B. The belt speed and tension requirements for the conveyor drive system. C. The material bulk density that the conveyor will transport each shift. D. The electrical power requirements for all motors along the run length. The correct answer is A. Precise baseline elevations and alignment references for the full run. Before setting the first conveyor frame section, the ironworker must establish precise baseline elevations and alignment references for the full length of the conveyor run. Conveyors require tight alignment tolerances to ensure the belt tracks properly and the structural loads are distributed correctly. Survey reference points are set at intervals along the conveyor route to guide placement of each successive frame section. Question 104. What measurement technique does an ironworker use to verify that conveyor pulleys are parallel and properly aligned? A. Measuring the belt tension with a spring-loaded gauge at each pulley. B. Checking the pulley color markings against the installation manual. C. Using a laser alignment tool or piano wire to check pulley alignment. D. Running the conveyor at full speed and observing the belt for tracking. The correct answer is C. Using a laser alignment tool or piano wire to check pulley alignment. Ironworkers use laser alignment tools or piano wire, taut wire, methods to verify that conveyor pulleys are parallel and properly aligned. The laser or wire provides a straight reference line against which pulley faces are measured to detect angular or offset misalignment. Proper pulley alignment is critical for belt tracking, as misaligned pulleys cause the belt to drift to one side, causing wear and potential damage. Question 105. What is the consequence of improper pulley alignment in a belt conveyor system installed by ironworkers? A. The conveyor motor will overheat and shut down after a brief period. B. The structural frame bolts will loosen due to excessive belt vibration. C. The belt carrying capacity will increase beyond the designed load limit. D. The belt will track to one side causing premature wear and edge damage. The correct answer is D. The belt will track to one side causing premature wear and edge damage. Improper pulley alignment causes the belt to track to one side, resulting in premature belt wear, edge damage, and potential belt failure. Belt mistracking can also cause material spillage, increased power consumption, and damage to the conveyor frame and idlers. Maintaining precise pulley alignment during installation is one of the ironworker's most critical tasks when installing conveyor systems. Question 106. During installation, an ironworker finds that a conveyor support foundation is 20 mm higher than the design elevation. What should be done? A. Install adjustable shim packs to compensate for the elevation error. B. Raise all subsequent foundations to match the higher elevation found. C. Grind down the concrete foundation surface to achieve correct height. D. Proceed with installation as 20 mm is within standard construction tolerance. The correct answer is A. Install adjustable shim packs to compensate for the elevation error. The ironworker should install adjustable shim packs to compensate for the foundation elevation error. Shimming is the standard method for correcting minor elevation differences between actual foundation conditions and design requirements. The shim pack thickness is calculated to bring the conveyor frame to the correct elevation. Grinding concrete or raising all other foundations would be impractical and potentially compromise the conveyor alignment. Question 107. What is the final step in commissioning a belt conveyor system after the ironworker has completed the structural installation? A. Paint all exposed steel surfaces with the specified coating system. B. Run the conveyor unloaded to verify belt tracking and alignment. C. Submit the as-built drawings to the building permit office on file. D. Remove all temporary construction supports from beneath the conveyor. The correct answer is B. Run the conveyor unloaded to verify belt tracking and alignment. The final commissioning step is to run the conveyor unloaded to verify proper belt tracking and alignment before introducing material. This test run allows the ironworker and commissioning team to identify and correct any tracking, alignment, or vibration issues while the belt runs without load. Belt tracking adjustments are made to training idlers and pulley alignment until the belt runs centered and true at full speed. Question 108. What safety device is installed along the length of a belt conveyor to allow workers to stop the belt in an emergency? A. A pressure relief valve connected to the conveyor hydraulic system. B. A thermal overload switch mounted on the drive motor housing only. C. A pull cord emergency stop switch running the full length of the belt. D. A photoelectric sensor that detects personnel standing near the frame. The correct answer is C. A pull cord emergency stop switch running the full length of the belt. A pull cord emergency stop switch runs the full length of the belt conveyor, allowing any worker anywhere along the conveyor to pull the cord and immediately stop the belt. This is a critical safety device required by provincial occupational health and safety regulations and equipment standards. The pull cord is connected to a switch that kills power to the drive motor when activated from any point along the conveyor. Question 109. What must be confirmed before an ironworker begins decommissioning a structural steel component in an occupied building? A. That all paint has been removed from the steel surfaces to be cut. B. That all utilities and services in the affected area are isolated. C. That the building's fire suppression system has been fully drained. D. That the structural component has reached the end of its design life. The correct answer is B. That all utilities and services in the affected area are isolated. Before decommissioning any structural steel component in an occupied building, all utilities and services in the affected area must be isolated. This includes electrical, gas, water, compressed air, and process piping. Failure to isolate services can result in electrocution, gas leaks, flooding, or other hazards during cutting and removal operations. A lockout-tagout procedure must be followed for each energy source. Question 110. What document must be prepared before decommissioning a load-bearing structural steel member in an existing building? A. A material recycling plan listing all scrap metal collection points. B. A worker scheduling document showing crew assignments for the shift. C. An engineered shoring and temporary support plan for the affected area. D. A cost estimate for replacement members to be ordered from the mill. The correct answer is C. An engineered shoring and temporary support plan for the affected area. An engineered shoring and temporary support plan must be prepared before removing any load-bearing structural steel member. The plan, designed by a professional engineer, specifies the temporary supports needed to carry the loads that the member being removed currently supports. Without proper shoring, removing a load-bearing member can cause progressive collapse of the structure above. Question 111. What hazard must an ironworker be aware of when cutting painted structural steel during demolition or removal work? A. The paint may contain silicone that clogs the cutting torch orifice. B. The paint color may camouflage important structural markings on steel. C. The paint may interfere with the magnetic base of surveying instruments. D. The paint may contain lead, releasing toxic fumes and dust when cut. The correct answer is D. The paint may contain lead, releasing toxic fumes and dust when cut. When cutting painted structural steel, particularly in older buildings, the paint may contain lead, which releases toxic fumes and dust when heated or disturbed. Lead exposure can cause serious health effects. Provincial occupational health and safety regulations require a lead paint assessment before cutting or demolishing painted steel. If lead is present, specific controls such as HEPA ventilation, respiratory protection, and containment are required. Question 112. When disassembling a bolted structural steel connection during renovation, in what sequence should the bolts be removed? A. Remove bolts progressively from one side while maintaining stability. B. Remove all bolts simultaneously to separate the members quickly. C. Remove the largest diameter bolts first, then work to smaller ones. D. Remove bolts only from the top flange connection before the web bolts. The correct answer is A. Remove bolts progressively from one side while maintaining stability. Bolts should be removed progressively from one side of the connection while maintaining structural stability of the remaining assembly. This controlled sequence prevents sudden unloading or collapse of the member being disconnected. Temporary supports or rigging must be in place to catch the weight of the member as bolts are removed. Simultaneous removal of all bolts can cause an uncontrolled drop of the steel member. Question 113. What type of assessment must be conducted on a building before structural steel demolition begins in Canada? A. A seismic vulnerability assessment to determine earthquake risk levels. B. A designated substance survey identifying asbestos, lead, and PCBs. C. A property valuation appraisal for insurance coverage documentation. D. A soil contamination study of the ground beneath the building footprint. The correct answer is B. A designated substance survey identifying asbestos, lead, and PCBs. A designated substance survey must be conducted before structural demolition begins in Canada. This survey identifies hazardous materials such as asbestos, lead paint, polychlorinated biphenyls, PCBs, and other designated substances that may be present in the building. Provincial occupational health and safety regulations require this survey to protect workers from exposure during demolition and to ensure proper handling and disposal of hazardous materials. Question 114. During steel removal, an ironworker notices that a member thought to be non-structural is actually carrying load. What should be done first? A. Continue removal but increase the number of workers on the task. B. Cut the member quickly to minimize the time the load is unsupported. C. Stop work immediately and have the engineer assess the load path. D. Install additional personal fall protection before resuming the work. The correct answer is C. Stop work immediately and have the engineer assess the load path. The ironworker must stop work immediately and have the engineer assess the actual load path before proceeding. Removing a load-bearing member without proper shoring can cause progressive collapse, endangering all workers in the area. The engineer will determine what temporary supports are needed and revise the demolition sequence to safely account for the unexpected load-carrying member. Question 115. What method should an ironworker use to lower heavy steel members removed during structural disassembly? A. Allow members to free fall into a designated debris zone at ground. B. Slide members down an inclined channel beam to a collection point. C. Have workers carry each member down temporary stairways by hand only. D. Rig and lower members using a crane or hoist under controlled descent. The correct answer is D. Rig and lower members using a crane or hoist under controlled descent. Heavy steel members must be rigged and lowered using a crane or hoist under controlled descent during structural disassembly. Controlled lowering prevents the member from falling uncontrolled, which could strike workers, damage adjacent structures, or cause vibration and instability in the remaining structure. Each member is rigged before its connections are fully released so the crane supports its weight throughout removal. Question 116. When assessing the condition of an existing steel structure, what does the ironworker look for at bolted connections? A. Whether the bolt heads have been painted the correct color per plan. B. Whether the bolt manufacturer's name is still legible on the head. C. Signs of corrosion, loose bolts, missing bolts, or cracked connection plates. D. The date stamp on each bolt to verify they are within warranty period. The correct answer is C. Signs of corrosion, loose bolts, missing bolts, or cracked connection plates. When assessing bolted connections, the ironworker looks for signs of corrosion, loose or missing bolts, and cracked connection plates. These conditions indicate deterioration that may reduce the connection's capacity below safe levels. Loose bolts can be detected by tapping with a hammer, a ringing sound indicates tight, a dull thud indicates loose. Cracks in connection plates are identified through visual inspection and may require dye-penetrant testing. Question 117. An ironworker discovers that section loss from corrosion has reduced a beam flange thickness by 25%. What action is required? A. Notify the engineer to evaluate and design a repair or reinforcement. B. Apply rust converter paint to the affected area to halt the corrosion. C. Weld additional steel plate to the corroded flange without engineering. D. Continue monitoring the corrosion rate during the next annual review. The correct answer is A. Notify the engineer to evaluate and design a repair or reinforcement. The ironworker must notify the engineer to evaluate and design an appropriate repair or reinforcement when section loss from corrosion reaches 25% of the original flange thickness. A 25% reduction significantly impacts the beam's moment capacity and may reduce it below the required design strength. The engineer will determine whether the beam needs a cover plate reinforcement, replacement, or load reduction. Question 118. When welding a reinforcing cover plate to a corroded steel beam flange, what surface preparation is required first? A. Paint the corroded surface with a zinc-rich primer before welding. B. Remove all rust and corrosion products to expose sound base metal. C. Heat the corroded area to dry out any moisture trapped in the rust. D. Apply filler putty to smooth out the pitted surface before welding. The correct answer is B. Remove all rust and corrosion products to expose sound base metal. All rust and corrosion products must be removed to expose sound base metal before welding a reinforcing cover plate. Welding on corroded surfaces produces porosity, lack of fusion, and weak welds because rust contaminates the weld pool. The ironworker uses grinding, wire brushing, or abrasive blasting to clean the surface to bare metal within the weld zone. Structural welding standards require clean base metal for all structural welds. Question 119. When replacing a deteriorated structural steel member in an existing building, what must be in place before the old member is removed? A. A building permit revision documenting the change in member size used. B. The replacement member must be prepositioned adjacent to the location. C. Temporary shoring or support to carry the loads during the changeover. D. An environmental assessment of dust and noise impacts on building users. The correct answer is C. Temporary shoring or support to carry the loads during the changeover. Temporary shoring or support must be in place to carry the loads before removing a deteriorated structural steel member. The temporary supports transfer the loads that the member carries to alternative load paths during the changeover period. Without temporary support, removing the member could cause collapse of the structure above. The shoring design is prepared by a professional engineer as part of the replacement plan. Question 120. What is the most important preventative maintenance task for exposed structural steel in a corrosive industrial environment? A. Tightening all bolts to their original pretension values every year. B. Replacing all sacrificial anodes attached to the steel members monthly. C. Measuring the steel member deflection under load during peak periods. D. Regular inspection and repair of the protective coating system on steel. The correct answer is D. Regular inspection and repair of the protective coating system on steel. Regular inspection and repair of the protective coating system is the most important preventative maintenance task for exposed structural steel in corrosive environments. The coating system, paint, galvanizing, or metallizing, is the primary barrier between the steel and the corrosive environment. Maintaining the coating in good condition prevents corrosion from starting. Spot repairs to coating failures should be made promptly before rust develops. Thank you for practicing with Question Bank Hub. Good luck on your Ironworker Red Seal certification exam. Don't forget to subscribe for more exam preparation content.